Thank you, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce myself. Thank you, everyone, for joining again. My name is Erica Weems, she, her pronouns. I am the Senior Research Associate at Justice and Joy National Collaborative. And today we are talking about power in our truth. So thank you for joining our webinar and with our lovely youth panel and the authors of the reports. Go ahead and go next slide, please. So for our housekeeping, we just ask for folks, if you have not already, go ahead and type in the chat your name, pronouns, and where you're located. Also, you can use the chat box to also ask any questions for the panel. We'll go ahead and collect those questions to ask the panel at the end of the discussion. We ask for all participants to stay muted during the webinar, and this webinar will also be recorded for your use afterwards. That will be sent from Justice and Joy National Collaborative and be housed on the website, in addition to the full report itself. And then finally, we just ask for you to practice self-care. If you have any time where you need to step away to grab a water, grab a snack, we most definitely understand, and we'll make sure you put yourself first and take care of yourself. And in the chat, we also have our resource guide. Just a content warning, there are going to be some subjects in this webinar that may be sensitive towards individuals. And so we want to make sure that you are aware of that before we continue on. And just a little bit about Justice and Joy National Collaborative. At Justice and Joy National Collaborative, our goal is to achieve collective power to advance justice, establish affirming social narratives, and build ecosystems of support with and for girls and young women and gender-expansive young people of color. And we just also want to acknowledge the 121 girls and gender-expansive young people that were a part of this survey, in addition to the 3 research leads, Home Place Research Lab, NYU, and GGE, for joining us and also being such a huge collaborator throughout this process. It would not be possible without you. So thank you. And this is me giving you your flowers. So we are so honored to share this space with you.
All right.
Go ahead, Jamelia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Erica, for opening the space. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. We are beyond excited to see all of our friends and community members here with us to celebrate the release of our report, Power in Our Truths. My name is Dr. Jamelia Harris. I am the Senior Director of Collaborative Research at Justice and Joy National Collaborative, and one of the co-authors of the Power in Our Truth series, which is a 4-part research series that provides insights into girls and gender-expansive young people of color's experiences and feelings regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, systemic racism, police brutality, and the related impact on their physical, emotional, and mental health. And today, I, along with 2 of my co-authors, Dr. Lauren Mims and Amina, will be sharing findings from the first 2 reports in our research brief series that highlight the specific impact of police and police violence on girls and gender-expansive young people of color. Next slide. Yes, I'm seeing all the love in the chat. We are so grateful to have them on our team. Thank you so much, everyone. So I just want to ground us a little bit in some background information of our study to frame our discussion with our panel of brilliant youth speakers that you are going to hear from in just a moment. So just a little bit of background about the research behind the Power in Our Truth series. This study was conducted as a follow-up survey with girls and gender-expansive young people of color who had previously participated in our virtual youth-led in solidarity conversations that took place in 2020, which really engaged young people, a group of, I believe our sample was over 400 young people across the nation who were engaged in conversations about this unprecedented moment of thinking about the impact of the intersection of COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing uprisings due to systemic racism. And essentially, we developed an online survey that was in response to some of the themes that we heard from those youth-led conversations that included open and closed-ended questions that were focused around more specific themes related to systemic racism, police brutality, as well as the impact of issues of police brutality on young people's mental health. And so this initial draft of the survey was reviewed by a group of girls and gender-expansive young people of color who provided their feedback, and their feedback was incorporated into the final version of the survey. Over 121 surveys were used to inform the research that you are going to be hearing about today. And so our response rate was 28.8%. Next slide. So we had participants from a total of 27 states, including Washington, D.C., and several tribal communities. As you see on the screen, the states with the largest number of participants are highlighted in dark purple, and that was California at 19.8%, New York at 14%, Texas at 5.8%, Minnesota at 5.8%, Tennessee, and Ohio, both at 5%. The age range of our participants was between 14 and 30 years old, and on average, participants were around 21 years old. Here you can see the breakdown of participants' race and ethnicity background. And next slide. Here you can see the breakdown of participants' gender pronouns. We encouraged all of our participants to self-identify so you get a full picture that there was a lot of diversity in terms of lived experiences and identities. Next slide. So this report series, it's not a traditional report in the sense that it seeks to honor the wisdom, resistance, and power of girls and gender-expansive young people of color. And in doing so, we built directly on the direct quotes from participants to analyze the data behind this report. And we really did that with the intention of wanting to honor the language, honor the lived experience, honor the truth-telling of young folks, and especially as a team of all Black women researchers, emphasis of Black women research team with deep personal connections to issues of over-policing and police brutality. This was really important to us, and we viewed it as our way of giving back to the broader movement that is in resistance to the war being waged against our bodies, and essentially really want this tool, this research report, to serve as an advocacy tool in the broader movement to end police violence. Next slide. So just to share a little bit more about the report, Power in Our Troops is the first report in our series. As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 reports in this series. Our next report you're going to hear about in just a moment will be released later this month, but our first report was released October 14th. And this report highlights our findings on participants' feelings about police and police violence. And we also offer insights into their ideas for how decision makers can address police violence and advance safety in their communities. So I'm going to get into sharing just a little bit of the data to give you a prelude to some of the things that we cover in this report, but I really do want to encourage you all to read and engage with the full report on your own time, as we're not going to get too in-depth in the research report findings, but we will share some of the findings to frame our discussion with our panelists today. Next slide. So getting right into the data, this first slide, we asked participants about their sense of safety in encounters with police officers, and 63.2% of respondents either disagreed or strongly agreed with the statement, "I feel safe in encounters with police officers." And you'll see that this is reflective of all participants who participated in our survey. Next slide. Consistent with the literature on youth attitudes, and just sort of this broader culture around not really trusting the police officers, we're not really surprised about this. Findings in our study show that there was a lack of widespread trust in the police among girls and gender-expansive young people of color. Nearly 70% of participants either disagreed or strongly agreed with the statement, "I trust police officers in general." Next slide. And when we asked participants about whether or not they fear that they may be a victim of police brutality, 54.3% of girls and gender-expansive young people of color either agreed or strongly agreed with the statement, "I fear I may be a victim of police brutality." Next slide. So while police brutality negatively impacted all young people, the impact of witnessing police violence was especially harmful to Black girls and gender-expansive young people. When we took a look at the disaggregated data, we found that 75.4% of Black girls and gender-expansive young people either agreed or strongly agreed with the statement, "I fear that I may be a victim of police brutality." And if you can remember the slide before, this is 20% higher than the rate for all girls and gender-expansive young people of color who participated in our study. And so that means that nearly 3 in 4 of Black girls and gender-expansive young people said that they fear that they may be victims of police brutality. And in open-ended survey responses, we also had noticed particular patterns around how Black girls and gender-expansive young people were talking more in depth about how they were making connections between their race, gender, and age identities in connection to their reactions and feelings about police brutality. Next slide. So we have this quote from a young person who shares, "As a young Black woman, I'm in a constant state of fear, which causes a heightened sense of awareness. I truly don't feel safe anywhere. I also feel worried about my younger siblings." And so this was consistent when we were looking at some of the open-ended responses, particular to Black girls and gender-expansive young people. There was an explicit way that young people were talking about their race and their gender identities. They were often talking about the intersectionality of both their race, gender, and as well as their age identities in connection to their feelings and reactions to police brutality. Next slide. So in the open-ended survey responses, we wanted to know young people's thoughts about how to address police violence. And these survey responses that we received from participants included a diverse array of suggestions. Among the most common responses we heard from young people was the call to defund police. These responses were often accompanied by suggestions to redirect funding towards community-based infrastructures. And young people especially express how their ideas and visions for safety could be realized in their communities, as well as their desire to have their voices heard and centered in efforts to seek solutions. And so as we see from this young person, a desire to have their voices centered as we're considering what safety and care looks like and feels like to them. And so we're really excited that today we have a panel of youth speakers who are deeply engaged in work to end police violence, to end gender-based violence. So you are going to hear from them more in depth about how they're envisioning futures free from police violence. But before we get to that, I want to pass the mic over to Amina and Dr. Lauren Mims, who are going to talk a little bit more about the second report in our series that's going to be released later this month.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Thanks so much for joining us. As Dr. Jamelia said, I am Dr. Lauren Mims. I'm an assistant professor of applied psychology at NYU Steinhardt, and I am super excited to have the whole home PACE lab. You've probably seen them in the chat. Thanks, y'all. And also want to highlight amazing Emina, and Emina is led the charge on this paper starting in her first year as an undergraduate student, and so we're excited to talk through what we have today once the slides return. We'll go to the next one. Okay, so dropping later this month, we are going to continue in centering the voices of girls and gender-expansive youth of color by looking at how they speak truth about videos of police brutality and how those detrimentally affect their mental health. Next slide, please. So first, it's really important to kind of think about how often do girls and gender-expansive youth of color in this survey see videos of police brutality in the media? As you can see here, an overwhelming number see it sometimes, and just 1% see it every day, and also just 8% see it never. So the kind of majority of folks are seeing videos of police brutality sometimes or most days. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so we also wanted to ask girls and gender-expansive youth of color what were some notable practices that helped them cope in response to the stress of the COVID-19 pandemic and the viewing of viral videos of police brutality. Nearly 32.2% said psychological self-care practices such as reading, therapy, or intentional disconnection from social media was really important to them in helping them cope with the images of police brutality that were widely circulated on social media. In addition, 17.3% reported spiritual strategies as meditation, music, and prayer as being salient to addressing their distress. 16.5% reported relationships with friends, family, community members, and organizations as very important and vital to detoxing from the toxicity of social media. And 15.7% also reported physical as exercise, walking, yoga, dancing, hiking as important to preserving their happiness. And lastly, a very important self-care coping strategy was emotional, which was watching television and social media separate to the police brutality. But some did mention that raising their voices on social media was an extremely helpful and salient coping strategy. Next slide.
And so I love really centering here. We started by centering the coping, and that girls and gender-expansive youth are already doing things to cope with the detrimental effect of viewing these viral videos. But I think it's also important to, after we ask them about what is their initial reaction to the videos and kind of elevating that in the research, what we see here is that 80.2% said that their initial reaction to seeing viral videos of police brutality was to feel angry or frustrated. The second was to feel fear, that they feared for their lives or the lives of their loved ones. There's also additionally sadness, that it was really difficult to see this happening, and often talked about sadness happening again and again and again with no recourse. Some folks said that, after a while they had no reaction because they had seen it so many times that it was difficult to have a reaction. And then 8.3% of folks had something else that was beyond anger, fear, sadness, grief, or not a reaction at all. So I think many of you who are here can probably think about for when you've seen a viral video of police brutality, maybe when you're scrolling through social media, kind of what is your initial reaction? And also in using qualitative research, we were able to highlight the voices of folks. So on this slide, we have one 15-year-old person who says, "I was only 13 years old during the pandemic. What I would see on the news during quarantine scared me and made me think, is this what future generations will have to go through again and again? and yet still have to fight for change. No person should have to go through that or lose their loved one just because an officer thinks they are above the law. Next slide.
So I think the final quote we really wanted to leave with this brief, and the whole intention behind this webinar in the first place, is what this quote so eloquently describes, which is, leave space at the table for the people who are experiencing these injustices. Change cannot happen without hearing us out and giving us the space to be in discussion and decision-making process. And I think that's the whole intention behind our brief. Even though we don't necessarily have a solutions section, we do believe that by spreading this information, having us all present at the table and having these important discussions, can we really make change? So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mims and Amina. We appreciate that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We are going to go ahead and jump right in to our youth panel. I just wanted to say, so for this first report of our series, we really took the question of how are girls and gender-expansive young people strategizing to end police violence in their communities. And one thing that was clear is that participation from the folks in the survey just wanted to basically have, decision-making opportunities. They wanted to be brought to the table. They didn't want to be left behind. And so we're so honored to join young advocates and organizers of Justice and Joy National Collaborative and GGE to join the conversation to really envision a new space free from police violence for our communities. And so I'm going to go ahead and have the panelists do a quick introduction, their name, pronouns, and just their short bio for folks to get to know you a little bit better. So Amina, if you want to go ahead and start us off, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amina Patricia Nekwe. I am a sophomore studying history and English at NYU. I am also a proud member of the Home Place Research Collective as an undergraduate research assistant. In my spare time, I also am a youth advocate for the End Peer Poverty Initiative as a part of Grassroots Community Foundation, which is a social action and justice organization for all girls to grow up to be healthy women. So yeah, that's me.
And next, I'll go ahead and pass it to Julia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia. Pronouns are she, her. I am a first-year social services major at Brown University with a background in advocacy and social and criminal justice. In my free time, I work with the YAB on for the New Jersey Justice Collaborative for Girls, which is one of my favorite things to do, by the way. I just need to throw that in there. Also, and I am a part of e-boards on a few different organizations on my campus. One going by Soul, which is Shades of Unified Love for queer people of color. So I enjoy spending time with that and working in the app.
Thank you, Julia. Let's see, we'll go ahead and have Genesis go ahead and go next.
Hiya, my name is Genesis Holland. I am a Justice and Joy Research Fellow, and in my spare time, I'm also studying to be a journalist. I saw some Richmond people in the house, and I just want to say hi, y'all. I'm here because I have a passion for these sort of subjects, and I have worked in depth in the past in solidarity reports, including not only this one, but the one in, I saw 804, yep, in response to gender violence, in response to police brutality, as well as in response to reproductive justice. So, yeah.
Thank you. We're going to have Amina go ahead and go next.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Amna. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm actually studying nursing in Staten Island. I'm a part of GGE, and GGE makes it really easy to find new ways to help out my community. I was never really I never knew ways to help out, but with GGE it's really easy. So.
And then Monique, go ahead and go.
Hi everybody, my name is Monique. I use she, they pronouns. I currently live on Oahu, which is an island, one of the Hawaiian islands. I came here to study. I'm a recent college graduate from the University of Hawaii Manoa. My focus was on Asian and ethnic studies, and I definitely utilize those frameworks throughout the work that I do. Currently, I work with Justice and Joy as a research fellow, and I'm happy to be here with y'all. That's it.
And last but not least, Alani, go ahead.
Hi, y'all. My name is Alani. My pronouns are they, she. I graduated from the University of North Carolina in Greensboro about a year ago, a degree in African Diaspora Studies, and I currently am doing work now with the National Youth Justice Network as a youth program organizer. I am a Speakers Bureau and NABG, National Agenda for Black Girls, GE, and I'm quite passionate about mental health and holistic healing for Black girls and gender expansive folks. So I'm happy to be here with y'all and to connect.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and start with the questions. We can go ahead and share the slide again, please. So our first question, which should be, thank you. What are you, what is your reactions to the findings and narratives shared in the reports? And did anything resonate with you or surprise you at all? And this question is for everyone, but more so for Monique, Genesis, and maybe Amina, if you would like to share.
Hi, y'all. I'll go first if that's allowed. So I would like to bring up two specific data points that were in the report. And that is the 75.4% of Black girls experiencing fear of police brutality, as well as the fact that if you look at the one where it says, do they agree that they trust police, or I feel safe in encounters with police. The big strongly disagree and disagree data is large, but I also want to talk about the fact that for agree, we have less than 10% who are in any sort of positive relationship with the police, which is a very, very low average. So specifically talking about like the 75.4% of the data, that was of a number of 61 girls. So out of those 61 girls, an average of, sorry, I had to do the math, 45 girls experienced or are bound in this community of fear. None of them know each other, or maybe two or three of them know each other, but they're all bound by this one idea that they are afraid for their lives when it comes to interacting with police. And that fundamentally goes against what the police are supposedly supposed to be there for, and the general idea of serve and protect. Who are they serving? Who are they protecting? If you have 45 out of 61 girls who fear for themselves. And I know I experienced the same thing growing up. I was constantly targeted, specifically because I have young parents who were not in the most fanciest of cars. And it was known, especially those who are on here from Richmond, if you went into any sort of Henrico or predominantly white neighborhood with a sort of beat up, rundown car like that, you would be stopped in an instant. I remember many nights just fearing when I saw the blue lights, kind of pull my parents over. Is this going to be the time when I am going to lose them or even lose my own life? I never had any sort of safe interaction with police. And to this day, if I see a police on the street, I will do anything to avoid them, anything. And that also goes back into that less than 10% of girls feeling, or gender expansive youth feeling, any sort of safety when it comes to them as well. And I just wanted to, bring those up and say that if we really want reform, if we really want to sorry, I'm getting nervous. If we really want to change this narrative, we have to change what the base of policing is. And I'll turn it over.
Yeah, I mean, I very much agree. I remember when I first was just coding the data and going through it, being really astounded by how much fear was deeply integrated in this data. A lot of the, I remember when we were coding it, we had quite difficulty almost naming the emotions that the girls in gender expansive youth were explaining, because it wasn't just fear, it wasn't just anger, it wasn't just disappointment, it was something a bit deeper than that. I feel like a feeling that we all can relate and resonate with, a fear, a feeling that goes without saying. And I felt like that was really impactful. And I think also just thinking about what you brought up, Genesis, of the amount of people who are afraid of the police. I mean, I'm afraid of the police and I've never had a run in with them, but I really don't intend to. But knowing, especially, that whole idea gets even further complicated when we know just because of our skin color, we can be targeted. And I just think it's incredibly impactful to just, when you see the data points, it almost feels a bit more palpable than it is by just processing your feelings. And so I just wanted to say your feelings are valid, your experiences are valid, and I'm so sorry you've ever had to experience that.
I just want to thank y'all for sharing. I really agree with both of y'all, and I think that for me, I really struggled with when it comes to statistics. I really don't want to like view people in that sort of framework, but it is so powerful and impactful to see like these numbers and to see how police brutality and this type of violence is really affecting folks. And I also really love that Dr. Jamelia Harris brought up the aspect too of how it really impacts specifically young Black women of color or young Black gender expansive youth of color. And I also think that's like a great point to bring up of like, we are all young people, or in the survey, we were all young people, right? Like, how is it that our interactions with the police are so negative when in reality we shouldn't even have any interactions with the police? Like, we are young people, that shouldn't necessarily be something that is of concern to us, and the fact that it is so prevalent is, I think, really, really dangerous, and just brings back to the point of like, how are we protecting our communities if even young people, you know, some of the most vulnerable people in our communities have that feeling of unsafety in their day-to-day lives, and like, what can we do to change that?
That's a really good point. Thank you, everyone. Would anyone else like to answer the question? And if not, we'll go ahead and go to the next question. Thank you. So our second question is, what do you want decision makers and leaders in our communities to know about young people of color and their experience with the police? And I feel like majority of folks that previously answered the last question touched on that, but if there's any other thoughts that you have, how you would re-envision this for community members to know, we would love to hear.
Hi, I'll go again. So I think one thing that was kind of already brought up with the research that Dr. Lauren Mims and Amina are doing is social media and access. So the day and age of access to these sort of brutalities that we are seeing have led to sort of this decline in the view of policing. However, that doesn't change the actual function and action of the police. We would not have this negative view if we didn't have the images to back it up. So in spite of this, we have noticed that even with our outcry of the actions of the police, defund the police, we're noticing encouragement and added funding to policing and sort of violent controlling narratives. Like, we have the police city that people are protesting day in and day out in Atlanta to even be built. And you can have everybody say that they don't want it, and there will still be an increase in this control. So I want to bring up that, and I also want to bring up the fact that this story, this fight for equality has been happening for decades. And the fight for it will always perpetuate and always continue. And that's the disheartening portion. It's not the fact that any of this is new, it's the fact that it continues. And we're noticing that we are fighting for the same things our grandparents were fighting for. And so the narrative here is, how long are we going to listen to young people, but not actually act on the things that they are requesting?
Yes, Genesis, speak to them. Anyone else?
I can go next. I sat on this question for a long time, and I realized that the answer is in fact in the question. So I want leaders and everybody to know that it's right there. It's the young people of color and their experiences with the police. Because I can't tell y'all how many conversations the door has been shut on me for because of my age or because of my youth, or they feel like because of my youth, I'm inexperienced with physical interactions when that means nothing at all. I've been around a lot of people that have poor encounters with police. I've had poor encounters. So it's like being able to express those and have those community conversations without it looking like arrogant aggression, or being able to educate my community leaders and the people around me about the things that are happening, and being able to have those truthful conversations. But the issue is the people want to have the truthful conversations and only want to talk about the good stuff, or only want to talk about the good in police or the good that we've seen in the community, when in reality, we have to take it back to where it wasn't created for us or by us. So how do you expect us to have hope in something that, to fix something that's just going to turn around and destroy us again? So it's like being able to put our faith in the police into action. But if you look at the statistics, these statistics are not numbers, they're stories. They're not individual data. These are individuals that have lived through the experiences of having these poor and these tragic situations, and it's history repeating itself. They want to use that term when we're learning about it in the books, or when we're learning about it in terms of the war, but when we're learning about it in the terms of statistics and numbers and how the same situations keep happening over and over again, we don't want to use that term, or we want to use it lightly, or just shine over the fact that this is something that Genesis had just brought up that has been happening for decades, that's been happening time and time again. But it's the same, we're getting that same anger, that same frustration, that same tired feeling of just wanting to give up because nobody's listening. So I really just believe that if we're able to continue to hold spaces and have these young people of color share their experiences, we can start, because it's always been, the answer has always been inside. And all the adults and the leaders want to look outside the house and want to look outside for representation of people that don't even look like us or older than us, because you think that they're more qualified to handle these situations when they're not. So I just think it's important that we need to start within if we're going to reach outward.
Yes, as Jamelia and I say, truth tellers. These folks of the numbers that on the report, these are truth tellers. They're not telling anything else but the truth. So thank you, Julian. Anyone else like to answer?
I had just a few reactions to what Julia lifted up, and we write about this in the report, that a lot of times when we're growing up, and I can remember this, being a young Black girl, we're not considered vulnerable to being susceptible to these kinds of experiences and interactions with police officers. And I have an older brother. I can remember him having so many conversations with my mom and my father growing up about sort of what kinds of experiences he might encounter with police officers. He was having run-ins with the police from the time he was in middle school, but I was never given that opportunity to have those kinds of conversations. And for myself, I can remember being an 8th grade Black girl in middle school. When I first was getting ready to transition into high school, there was a broadly talked about experience that a Black girl had where she was physically assaulted by a police officer. She dropped birthday cake on the floor. And this is like one of those cases that folks oftentimes lift up when we're talking about issues of police brutality against Black girls, but it actually happened at my high school. So the year that I was getting ready to go into high school, a Black girl had been physically assaulted and injured by a police officer at my high school, and no one talked to me about how I should prepare to have these kinds of interactions with police if it were to come up. And so we talk about this again, it's oftentimes framed as a rite of passage for boys of color, for Black boys in particular, but the data in our report really shows that girls and gender-expansive young people of color understand that gender does not exempt us from experiencing police violence. And one of the primary sites through which girls and gender-expansive young people of color experience police violence is in the US public school system. And so I share in the chat, a few years back, I was doing my dissertation data collection, and my research focuses largely around Black girls' experiences of school discipline and punishment. And when I asked girls, what is a form of punishment that Black girls experience and no other group of girls experience, one of the most recurring responses that I heard was physical assaults by campus security and physical assaults by police officers. And so I know that we're going to hear a little bit more about the police-free schools movement, but it's really important that we expand our understanding of police brutality beyond the traditional racial justice discourses, beyond the traditional framing of the Black Lives Matter movement, to really think more about how police are functioning in our school system and how we can extend the promise of safe learning environments, particularly to girls and gender-expansive young people of color, when we have police officers in our school system as a regular practice.
Thank you, Jamelia. And I dropped in that resource in the chat for folks to refer back to if you would like. And next, we'll go to our third question is, what are your ideas about what ways we can move towards a future free from police violence, and what kind of things you think young folks need in order to feel protected and safe? And so I will go ahead and open the floor for anyone that would like to answer.
I'll go.
Thank you.
I think that some of the ways that we move away from police violence, unrest, from utilizing law enforcement whenever possible. So having community-based care and or healing teams set up to resolve conflicts among relations, maybe within community organizations, rather than calling upon the police. Having, I think, just community really hold people accountable and just do all the various jobs or professionals do mental health work. I know in the city that I'm from, we have a non-law enforcement, like non-police mental health team that goes and does mental health calls specifically. And I think even escorts people if they need to go have extra care for themselves. And I think that's really particularly important with the increase in just deaths from police not being properly trained to handle mental health calls. So I also think that young folks need more spaces to just be themselves and go through their various stages of development. There aren't a lot of resources for parks and recs in different places, and especially more urban places. In the South, I see that the more Black or brown areas in certain cities or towns don't usually have as much resources, which means kids don't have very many places to be, which leaves them roaming around the city or the town, very easily able to be locked up and getting into trouble. So I think kids need more space, and young people need more space to be themselves and to grow. I also think that community should be more involved in the accountability process.
Go ahead. Okay.
I can go as well. I agree with Alani, and especially now, since with everything like going on, there is more like police brutality. And I feel like just having spaces where you feel comfortable and know that like other people get you just like surrounded by people who will understand like what's going on and about police brutality. I feel like that's really important. And honestly, I feel like just reaching out and just having someone to talk to, definitely, like I said, just people who like will understand what you're going through.
Yeah, as many folks know, the numbers for young folks experiencing a mental health crisis is increasing year by year, day by day. So it's critical for us to re-envision a place that is more safe and a place that's protected, and build community for folks rather than using violence as a form of reformment. So thank you. Anyone else want to answer the question? Open the floor. No, we'll go ahead and go to the next question. So our next question is, can you tell us more about ways that you are currently working to end gender-based and police violence in your community? And how can adult allies be better supporters in leading this work? So Julia, Monique, Alani, anyone's available, go ahead and answer if you would like.
I can start off. So definitely, I want to say one of the ways has been working with the Youth Advisory Board, and not even just the specific work that we are doing, sorry, but the work that we've done that's allowed me to progress in my communities, taking it back to my university and even back to my home community, and just being able to, like I said before, have those conversations. Or for example, I shared that I have background in criminal justice. So we had a discussion in one of my groups on campus about, like, it was like a Kahoot game about like your rights and your amendments, and the amount of people that did not know them or weren't able to decipher between the two was it was kind of alarming. And not to say that we need preparation for situations, but at the same time, it's like proper preparation can prepare us for anything. And I feel like with the way that law enforcement is moving and the things that we've seen in the past, information like that helps. So being able to know your rights when being encountered, and being so because they're not there to help us. They are not, like, especially in these kind of certain situations, they're not looking in the best interest of us. So if we don't know them, they're going to use that to get over on us. So holding those conversations, and not only that, but educating, like continuing to educate myself and the people that I work with, and even for adults, just to continue to hold youth-led spaces just for transparency and vulnerability, and being able to put our empathy into action, and not just ours, but the adults as well, and the people that we've seen in the past and the people that we're going to meet in the future, being able to hold these kind of conversations, and the not so good ones as well. Just being able to prepare that space for youth that I know would be very beneficial going forward.
I can add, and I feel like this just ties into what Amna's point was before about the importance of addressing mental illness and mental health. I know specifically for grassroots, although we're not particularly focused on police violence in our community, we have a very particular initiative every September called Green Ribbon Week, in which we raise awareness for youth mental health and encourage positive youth practices. We place emphasis upon parents, stopping and listening to their children and providing a safe space for children to exercise positive mental health practices for themselves. We encourage everyone to wear green. Recently, the Home Place Research Collective participated in Green Ribbon Week, and we all had a photo. Please check out our Instagram. We have a photo up on our Instagram. But those efforts of raising awareness about mental health, specifically mental health for Black girls, which is something that does not get a lot of attention, I think is what our efforts are. And I am definitely looking forward to working to do more in the future.
And what's that Instagram for folks to refer back to?
Let me get the official handle.
It looks like someone already beat you to it. So thank you at the Home Place Lab. We appreciate it.
Please follow us.
I just want to add really quickly. I think that when it comes to like how adults can really be better allies and help young people and just support them doing this work is understanding that young people are susceptible to experiencing anything that you are able to experience. Like any type of violence, any type of housing crisis, housing instability, food insecurity, any issue that you as an adult can experience, a young person also has that capacity to experience. And I think just remembering that, I think adults are really dismissive of the issues that young people experience when really like our issues are so connected because we are experiencing these same exact things in our day-to-day lives. It's just in a different framework, right? And just having that in mind and understanding that when young people need resources, like these are real resources they need to survive and to live and to be able to take care of themselves. And just I guess just keeping that in mind, like if you're an adult working with young people, just remembering that like we are literally people too, you know, and I think it's easy for adults to kind of view us in a way that maybe demeans us or just puts us in a way of like that we have less experience. But I would disagree with that, and I would encourage adults to maybe just change their view of how they look at young people.
Yeah, it's very powerful, Monique. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think that really sense. And I definitely agree with my sentiments. I know that in a lot of the work that I do, one of the things I try to do to help young people that have been affected by just police violence and gender-based violence is to give people the ability to tell their story in a way that's ethical, in a way that empowers them. Oftentimes, I have just noticed in being affected by the justice system, there can be a tendency, intentionally or unintentionally, to exploit these stories and experiences of people that have been affected by police violence and gender-based violence. And so, in like being a poet and being a creative person, I like to create the space for young people to express themselves and to be something outside of some of the most traumatic moments of their lives. Because I think people also don't understand that probably is the most traumatic moment of your life when you are dealing with police, or if you've been locked up, or you know somebody that's been locked up. And so to be able to separate yourself from that and to be able to grow from that and to blossom from that, rather than to stay in the energy of whatever that situation was, is really important. And so I think just collaborating with all kinds of communities is one way to do it. And I think adult allies, probably the best way I could say they could do better for showing up for young people, as I'm just transitioning out of being a young person, is really letting young people lead a lot more of the things that they want to do. If young people want to put on an event, let them put on the event. Supervise the orders maybe, or like you can look over the finishing touches, but young people really can put together absolutely anything. I've seen young people put together whole resource camps and like events for a community and give things away and give away food. I helped like GGE, we did a police free schools event this summer, and like they kind of said, y'all do what you want, and we made it work. So young people can really get a lot done. Young people have been out here like marching for Palestine, Sudan, and everybody else. So the kids is all right. And I think that people just need to understand that young people are people too. And they're up next.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really
Anyone else?
quickly.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So Julia talked a little bit about some of the work that she has been doing with our youth advisory board. And I just want to give you a little bit more bragging rights, because Julia has been for the past year a part of our New Jersey Justice Collaborative for Girls as a youth advisory board member. And with this initiative, it's a partnership with the New Jersey Department of Women. We were able to give our youth advisory board the decision-making power to fund grassroots community-based initiatives that are working to end sexual violence in their communities. And so Julia, along with some of her colleagues on the New Jersey Justice Collaborative for Girls Youth Advisory Board, funded 3 initiatives across the state of New Jersey to provide them with, I believe, $30,000 to fund some of their initiatives and support incredible work. And Julia, if you want to just talk a little bit more about what the focus groups were like for you that you recently conducted and how that's been for you. And also, I think what I've learned the most from Julia and the Youth Advisory Board is the importance of paying young people for their expertise and giving young people the power to make decisions about how we spend money as an organization. So Julia, I'm gonna pass it over to you to just elaborate a little bit more about that.
Okay, hey, I definitely touched on it, but I didn't go on the full because I know I could do this for days. But I just wanted to touch briefly on the group. So I'll start off with the focus groups. I believe now we're going into like almost 2 months ago, we met the groups that we funded for their communities. We met them for like kind of like a meetup, how's everything going? And we held these focus groups. And when I tell you so I'm 19. So being in a space with people that were younger than me, but also not that much younger, hearing the diversity and the power in the conversation almost blew me and one of my YAB members like off of our seats the entire time. Like from the moment that recorder started, we did not stop talking. Like, and even after, we weren't even able to continue, like we had to move, but we kept talking while we were walking. Like just the things that they had to say about like, okay, so for example, I had one group that their priority was rest, just the importance of rest and how rest is overlooked and how rest is deemed as a bad thing, especially in cultural communities, and how different cultures view rest. And because I know for me, it was y'all not doing that. So it's like being able to look at rest in a different light. That one, we had one that was on self-care. So teaching yourself affirmations and not only saying them, but believing them, and just the importance of like somebody else giving you an affirmation versus you giving yourself an affirmation, and the way and how it holds. And we're trying to teach ourselves that it should be equal from somebody giving you one and you giving yourself one. Like you shouldn't hold that higher than another. And the other group also touched on very of the different aspects of self-care and in the community itself. So those 3 groups, and it went from like, it was us from the beginning. Like when we started these applications, we went through and handpicked these applications from each individual group down. It was a long process, but I would do it all over again in a minute. Like just being able to sit there and have those conversations about young people like me that are doing the work that I wish that I was doing when I was younger. Like being able to have that support now, and just being able to see of what they're like, they might not be able to see it now, but being able to look in their future and like, hey, these are the seeds that y'all just planted. We're already seeing it grow. Like we're seeing the roots, we're seeing everything in between, and helping them see it. Because I know it's one thing to be doing the work, but when you're doing the work and you don't feel like it's going anywhere, it's almost, you feel like you're not doing the work. When in reality, you're touching people you've never met, you're hearing things from people that you've never seen before. So it's like, looking at like, it's like I always say, is like they've changed a part of me by helping me change them. So it's like looking around and like using what they've done to take it back into my community and help myself. They've taught me things about self-care and affirmation and rest that I never knew. I feel good about taking a nap now. Like, so it's just like being able to use the individuals that are coming to us for help to use them. And I know the people that I work with on the YAB board will say the same thing for every single one of them, because it's just been such an incredible experience to work with them and to continue to work with them, because our work is not done and we are just in the beginning. So that's my little spiel on the groups.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So next, I'm going to head and invite Damala Denny to the forum and go ahead and ask her to talk a little bit more about her role as a youth organizer manager at GGE and how folks can get more involved.
Hey y'all, my name is Damala. My pronouns are she and her. I am the manager of youth and alumni organizing at Girls for Gender Equity. I feel so blessed to be in this space. I think that the young people have been sharing such powerful tidbits, and I really appreciate all the experiences that y'all shared. And thank you to the researchers. Like, this is the stories of our community, and this is what we need to prove when we shouldn't have to, that we can keep ourselves safe in better ways than the state. I'm gonna talk a little bit about my work. Like Alani said, am all about giving young people platforms. I literally did not even want to talk today. I was like, let the young people have the space. I definitely try to seek out opportunities where young people are not present and bring them into those spaces because they are often most impacted. One of our panelists said the same systems that are working on adults are the systems working on youth. And I would even offer that the youth are more vulnerable, and so the impact is greater. Um, a lot of my work around police-free schools is youth-led. Last year, we did a deep dive into a police-free schools campaign. We uplifted our toolkit. Our toolkit is made in 4 parts. The first is for schools and communities, all the way down to organizers, including families. Folks can find it if they Google GGE. Oh, thank you. The resources in the chat. Please feel free to use that toolkit. It was a labor of love. We engaged lots of school communities in New York City, including staff, students, principals, deans, and family members to create activities for community building, and to teach about restorative justice. We also highlight the history of the fight against police in schools, because this is not the first time. This is not the first call for the end of police or policing in schools. Like, we are part of a longer trajectory of youth organizers that have said time and time again that police are not keeping them safe. So please engage with that toolkit if you have feedback or ideas. If you use it with your students or young people that you organize with, please reach out to me, let me know how it was. This year, like Alani mentioned, we had a second Police Free Schools event where one of our center activities were the creation of a Police Free Schools game. So we used the model of the game of life. I don't know if folks are familiar with that, but it's a board game that in the beginning you choose like your career, you can choose to go to college, and you kind of follow on this roadmap of life. You can choose to have a family, and then you're like stopped every couple spaces with like a water main break, so you lose X amount of money, or you were in an accident, so you lose X amount of money. But it was very capitalistic, very heteronormative, and I would say maybe the norm of the time. So we recreated this game, but from a lens of community, from a lens of centering care and being winning or getting points by how much you contributed to community care. And that's something that we want to add to our toolkit. So this year we're gonna add the game that we created as an update so that schools and other youth-centered spaces have this like physical representation of what a world could look like that didn't have police and didn't have policing. The interesting thing about the creation of the game is that when we were talking to young people about what they wanted to have in their community, and what they needed to have a successful community, no one mentioned police. No one said that we needed police. Folks said that we needed things like schools, community centers, community pantries where food would be free and accessible, mental health services, community gardens. A lot of the things that young people in the report said that they used to cope during the COVID-19 pandemic, like building relationships, tapping into their spirituality, were the things that young people mentioned that they needed to feel safe. that they needed to have a successful community. So those are the things that we put in the game. I also invite folks to follow us on all our social media platforms, following with a plug at GGENYC on all platforms, and would love to invite you to sign up to receive our newsletter. One thing that our policy team is working on that I did want to uplift in this space or that they're following is a bill that the governor has to sign before the end of the year. It's around creating a youth suicide prevention task force specifically for Black youth. And it would be targeting Black children between the ages of 5 and 18 years old. And I think that this is something that we can start to model in our own community spaces while we wait for the funding, while we wait for the state to kind of catch up to what we've already named Keep Us Safe. So I'd love for folks to share that. If there are young people in your spaces that are interested in talking and ideating around safety and how to build tools around safety in their communities, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamala. We appreciate it and sharing the light on GGE. We're gonna go ahead and open the floor for folks. If you have any questions, please drop in the chat. We'll go ahead and have the panelists or anyone on the call go ahead and answer them. In the interim of folks figuring out if they want to ask questions or not, I also want to open the floor to the rest of the panel to see if they have any words for the folks listening in, or if there's any points that you wanted to highlight before we close out.
Hi, it's me again. So I wanted to come on here and just as a closing remark and just sort of reminding that in all of this language that we use and all of these things that we referenced, we never referred to the people impacted by this system as victims, because that's something that we want to encourage. This is not a victimhood. This is us reacting to a system of oppression. And we're reacting in the best ways that we know possible. And in a lot of these cases, what's so scary about people talking about the police brutality, of people talking about all of these violences that we are facing, is that every single one of us is one thin step away to believing that could have been us. There is no specific factor that unifies all of us more than the fear that we feel. But what also unifies us is the encouragement and the fire that we feel to change this. And I just want all of the adults to put themselves in the shoes of the youth, because it's not like we all morphed into 25-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 60-year-olds. We all started somewhere, and we all started as a young person who either wanted to speak out or got spoken over. And I just want everyone to remember that.
Yes, thank you, Genesis. I'm checking the chat box. I don't see any questions, but afterwards, if you have any questions, feel free to email us. We'll go ahead and put our contact on the slide. Oop, should go back up. Yes, contact on the slide where you can contact us if you have any additional questions or want to explore more research. In addition, you can follow us on Instagram. And then I also just want to say thank you to the participants for the space that you have created with all of us. And I did see Jamelia hopped off of mute if you wanted to share something.
Really quickly, we just wanted to lift up our conference in solidarity. We Rise, Justice and Joy is going to be hosting Solidarity In Solidarity, We Rise Joyful Radical Abundance Summit, May 2nd to the 4th in 2024 in San Francisco. And this is going to be a youth-led national summit for girls, young women, and gender-expansive young people, centering those of color and including stakeholders from across the country. Erica, if you can, drop the link in the chat. I think Jesse may have direct messaged you. I'm not able to copy paste and drop things in the chat for some reason. But we wanted to make sure that folks had that on their radar, that the dates have now changed and we're going to be convening in 2024. So really excited to get to see all of y'all and be in community with you in person. And I just wanted to say, I mean, I got emotional in this space, just listening to you all sharing and uplifting all your brilliance and all of your power. And this was really just so moving for all of us here. We've learned so much from you, and we really just want to thank you for taking the time out to be in community with us, for sharing your wisdom, your expertise, and really amplifying just the importance of young folks being at the center of this work, of girls and gender expansive young people of color being at the center of this work, of this movement. We are really hearing everything that you shared, and we're excited. We're going to be documenting some of the things that have been lifted up, because we really want adults to have all of the things that you shared as an accountability reminder of ways that they can be working to end police violence in the lives of girls and gender expansive young people of color. So thank you again, everyone who is on this call, all of our youth speakers, all of our presenters. Damala, we really appreciate you connecting us with these brilliant young folks who are on this call. And again, thank you so much to our audience for joining us tonight.
Yes, well said. And this is not the end. This is just the beginning of wonderful and important and powerful reports coming out. So please stay tuned for those reports coming out. We have one coming in later in November, early December, January and February, and we're going to continue the conversation and look out for more webinars so you can continue to stay tapped into the movement. So thank you again, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful evening and rest well. Peace and love.